Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to go on a bit of a rant here. Back in the 1940s, Hollywood produced an awful lot of patriotic movies, all centered around World War II themes. But the general purpose of the movies was to instill pride in America and, of course, support the war effort. That's really not the case nowadays. It seems now that a lot of the producers in Hollywood want to do just the opposite. They want to denigrate history, accent things that maybe didn't go well, and they just want to pull down America's history and institutions, and they feel they're some kind of virtue signaling by doing this. Back to those movies in the 40s, it didn't matter what the trope was. I mean, some of them were just plain out patriotic. Some of them were really, tear jerkers because of their subject matter and what happened to the people in the story. And some of them were just there really to show the horrors of war. But no matter what the underlying theme of the movie was, the end result was you took pride in America and it was very patriotic. And like I said, that doesn't happen very often with today's producers. You know, it's that way in Korea. I've said for a long time that I think right now, South Korea is putting out some of the best movies globally. They just are. And even in a movie like this historical movie that they've released, tonight's lesson plan, which is called HARBIN, they've managed to do just that. You can see as you watch this all of the little foibles that have been placed in the movie, designed primarily to exploit patriotism for South Korea. Now, even in a movie like this, in this type of movie, where some of the things are really, they're kind of hitting you over the head with a hammer to do it. Even with that, the Koreans have managed to put together a really good film. I enjoyed this one. I think you will. And I'll tell you why as cinematic class is about to begin. Your professor is in. Greetings, salutations, another sundry affair. I am your cinematic professor and purveyor of truth in movies. And the truth is, I really enjoyed watching this movie. It was pretty good. A little bit of history as presented by the movie. Japan came in and took over Korea, occupied Korea, if you will. And it took the Koreans a good number of years before they were able to gain their independence. Now, from the time that Japan came over and occupied them, there was some years, I think almost 37 years, before Japan actually elected or appointed its very first prime minister, and that was Ito Hiroberne, and he is played in this movie by Lily Franklin. And what the Korean resistance, decides to do is assassinate Ito. And by doing so, hopefully they will win their independence. Didn't quite work that way, but let's not get ahead of ourselves because the story becomes a little bit more complicated than that. The man who hatches the plot, if you will, to assassinate Ito is An. And An is played in the movie by Hyun Bin. Now, what happens is he's leader of this resistance group. They get involved in this skirmish with the Japanese, and through using a mastery of technical strategy, they're able to defeat the Japanese, even though the Japanese outnumbered them. Okay, the problem arises when An, who has captured the Japanese leader, decides to show mercy. His idea is we're not all out to kill each other. You have been defeated. You're done. Now, go back to Japan, go live your life, and leave us alone. Now, the man he does this to is Tatsuo Mori. And Mori is played in the movie by Park Hoon. Ah, you know what? This guy doesn't take well to that. Okay. Instead of saying, well, this guy was nice enough to spare my life, I think I'll just, take what soldiers I have remaining and get out of here and go home. No, he decides he's been insulted because he's not been killed in battle. So he decides to go after on even harder than before. This also causes a rebellious mood against the members of his resistance group because you should have killed the guys. They take no prisoners. You should have destroyed them, and they see this as a major faux pas. So while there's a rift in this group, it's probably true that on the sides, his best way to make up for the damage that Mori has done since this encounter, and to finally get on the good graces of his team, his men, he will assassinate Ito, and that should be a big blow to what's going on there.
朝鮮という国は愚かな王と腐敗した治世たちが支配してきた国だが、国難のたびに変な力を発揮する。
하얼빈에서 해치웁시다. 할 수 있겠소?
저도 하얼빈으로 가겠습니다.
안중근, 적에게 노출되면 지금 멈출 순 없습니다. 지금! 아무도 우리를 기억하지 못할 거야.
동지들의 목숨을 가벼이 여기지 마시오.
독립이 되겠어. 자네의 결정에 다른 동지들의 목숨이 달려있어. 내 결정이 틀렸다고 생각하오.
So let's now take a little look behind the camera. This movie was written and directed by Woo Min Ho. He's done a nice job putting this together and leads everyone well. I want to mention cinematography in this. The cinematographer was Hong Kyung-pyo, and he's done something interesting in this. It's not a fogging technique, so don't get confused by that. But the way he's incorporated lighting in his shooting technique, it's really presented with a somber mien to it. And I think that's reflective because this was certainly a very somber time for the Koreans, having their country invaded by Japan and being ruled over by Japan. Not a bright, happy time. So even when they have a small little victories, Hong has put this like color pallor all over the scene so that it doesn't spur too much hope, I guess, for the characters involved. And the music for this was done by Jo Young Min, and the music is fine. It's very good and put together. Like most movies coming out of South Korea, this one is a little too long. They just don't know how to end a damn movie over there. And there are a couple of other things with the editing, but in order for you to have the insight on those aspects, we should peel back the veils of time and head back to the early Cretaceous period for the nation's first and only prehistoric film critic, Rex Real.
The ending is scattered with unnecessary flashback scenes, and there is time shift narrative at the concluding reels. Still, a good view for a patriotic yet tragic piece of history. Hollywood should make similar.
Thank you, Rex. Gotta tell you, folks, I kind of enjoyed watching this movie, even though the obvious patriotic ploys were rather noticeable, shall we say. It still was an awful lot of fun to watch this, and I think the conflict between An and his men uh, matched or possibly even superseded the conflict between the Japanese and the Koreans in this movie, and that just added to the tension to it. We're going to give it an above average grade, say around a C plus or so. It is definitely worth a view, especially if you like historical movies based on historical fact. And I could see where this movie would go over very well in Korea because it does really boost their patriotism, even though the assassination of Ito did not have the result they wanted immediately. I'll leave it at that. Hey, don't leave this review until you've had time to click the like button and then click that little subscribe button up in the corner so that no matter what venue you are watching this review on, if you click subscribe, every time Rex and I put out a new movie review, you will be notified so that you can stay on the bleeding edge of film production. You know, there are an awful, especially mainstream media, they're not going to touch a review for a movie like this. A Korean movie early in the year when it's not going to be, close to awards time, no one's going to touch this thing. But you get them here because there's a lot of good movies being made, and they aren't necessarily these big blockbusters that are coming out and trying to indoctrinate people into a certain mind thing. This is just a decent, fun film to watch. And you will find out about them through Rex and I. Nobody else does this stuff for you. You're welcome. And now that you have learned what you have learned, here endeth your lesson.